Hello, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. My printer is actually turning off in the background here. I am so sorry about the noise on that. You're very welcome to this morning's Well Expo webcast. And today our topic is teenagers. And I still have one in my house. So that's why I kind of thought, yes, very appropriate. Teenagers and what they go through as regards anxiety and emotions and everything they're coping with. And it will actually lead on to some chat about where we find ourselves at the moment with regards those who now find themselves with an extra length of time before they sit their leaving cert. So that category of students. Now, we'll only be talking about kind of the anxiety side of it, and for the families and parents, we're not going into anything broader than that. We're just going to work with what we have at the moment. And I am the parent of a leaving cert student, so I am, I know exactly what's going on out there. So all that being said, I would like to introduce you to my guest, psychotherapist Susi Lodola. And she has been on TV, on radio, and in the media. You will have seen articles by her in the paper all around topics to do with teenagers and other areas of mental health, well-being, and wellness in general. Susi, good morning.
Good morning, Barbara. Thanks for asking me to come on to your fantastic web series.
No problem. You're more than welcome, more than welcome. So, teenagers, I mean, actually, no, sorry, before I even touch that, psychotherapy, what is it and how can it help people? And, just in brief, I mean, I know it's a big broad palette.
Okay, well, Barbara, psychotherapy is kind of helping people to, we all find ourselves sometimes in our life we're experiencing difficult emotions, or we're coming to a crossroad in our life and we don't know which way to go, or we might find ourselves anxious, stressed, depressed, all sorts of difficult emotions. And then you go to a psychotherapist to help you sort through your mind, basically helping you to sort out what is going on in your mind and helping you to understand what is depression and what can you do to help yourself, what is anxiety, where does it come from, and how can I help myself to overcome it. So there's different types of approaches to psychotherapy, and the approach that I mainly use is cognitive behavior therapy, which is one of the most researched forms of therapy and is recommended by the medical profession for the likes of depression and anxiety.
And it works particularly well with teenagers.
Oh, teenagers are amazing. When I work with them, they're kind of, you see, the thing is with mental health in general now is the sooner you address it, the more successful and the quicker you're better. So unfortunately, sometimes people are afraid to reach out or, ask for help and go into therapy and seek out a psychotherapist, because the longer you leave it, the more you're entrenched in the type of thinking that you're doing. And I find with teenagers, they're kind of at the very start of having maybe unhelpful thoughts or ruminating or finding themselves in low mood. So when they're coming to therapy, they're very quickly in understanding what is going on and how they can help themselves, because they haven't really been doing it for a long time. But yeah, so that's kind of the gist of it, yeah.
And anxiety itself, is it a learned behavior, Susi?
Okay, well, in terms of teenagers, Barbara, the most mental health issues at the moment in my clinic is that teenagers with anxiety issues, okay? And is it what we also know, just before I answer your question, is that 1 in 3 Irish teenagers experiences anxiety and depression. And there was a huge study done by the School of Psychology in UCD. It's called the My World Survey #2. And they showed that there was an increase of like a double increase from their first survey they did to the second survey. So it's kind of like on the increase. And so in terms of, is it a learned behavior? So to go back a little bit here to answer that is who we are as human beings today is about 50% genetics and 50% is learned behavior. So our environment shapes us. So so genetics, it could be that you're born with kind of a disposition, a personality that is a little bit more anxious, a bit more nervous, a worrying type of personality. And then you might have a mom or a dad or friends or brother, sister that is kind of anxious and has, talking in a way that is an anxious or worriers, and they're sort of transferring that onto the child. But if the child has a different kind of personality, that's more happy-go-lucky and isn't really, hasn't got that disposition to worry or anxiety, that same parent wouldn't have the same impact, if you know what I mean. But if the two come together, you might find the child is highly anxious. So to answer the question, is it a learned behavior? 50% of it is learned, and the other 50 is your kind of genetic from your genes.
Yeah, and the reason I asked it was because, say, between myself and my husband, one of us is completely horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one of us is absolutely, kind of gets very anxious about things. Now, I know from chatting to you, you'll know which one is which, And it's funny because we can see, sometimes you say, oh, you're like your father, or oh, you're like your mother. And these expressions come out. And I know which ones in my house are the horizontal ones and which ones are the ones that I've taken after them.
Yeah, well, there you go. You see, there's different children have different personalities they're born with. So you're born with a certain type of personality, but then your parents and your peers have an influence on you as well. But it doesn't, and sometimes people say, well, I have 2 or 3 or 4 children and they're born in the same household, so why are they different? Why they're not affected the same way? There's a lot of factors that come into it. So first of all, the birth order, then of course their own personality comes into it, and then their peers and their teachers come into it, and how they're shaped, and what lens they use to view the world. So it's all different factors come into it. There's not just one factor that you can say, well, this person is anxious and this person is not anxious.
And what would you find would be the biggest mental health challenge at the moment with teenagers?
Well, it is anxiety. So it's like I said, anxiety is the biggest challenge at the moment. And the second one would be then depression. And especially now, and we can talk about that afterwards, about the situation with the Leaving Cert. So, but in general, like I said earlier, there's a huge increase in anxiety. And I find, you're kind of wondering, what is going on? And it's usually like, what we also have to understand is that adults who have mental health issues are later on in life, those are starting to manifest themselves already in their teen years. So 75%, roughly speaking, of mental health issues that are happening later on in life are starting to manifest in younger years. So that's why it's so important to address it now and give those teens the tools to help themselves deal with anxiety and understanding it, or depression, and what they can do, and give them the power to help themselves.
And how would I, as a parent, then know, as you say, to give them the power to help themselves? So how would I know if my teen was actually experiencing something within the, a mental health issue?
Yeah. How you would know is, like, teenagers being teenagers, they have their ups and downs anyway. So they have kind of the hormonal mood swings, and which are completely normal and to be expected. And they're actually really important that they kind of get a bit stroppy and maybe have arguments, and that is a completely normal reaction for teenagers. And it's actually really important to let them have it, because they're starting to kind of sever the apron strings. So they're trying to make their own identity. So separate from the parent. And the way they do that is by turning their back on them and not talking to them as much, and being maybe stroppy and moody and leave me alone, that type of thing, because they want to establish themselves with their own identity. And so that is normal. So how you know if a child is experiencing mental health issues is that if that increases, okay, so if you're finding yourself that they're more irritable than usual, that they may be shown a lot of anger or hostility, they may be more they might show more tearfulness or more crying. They sleep less, maybe their eating pattern changes, they're more agitated, and they lose interest in activities. They may isolate themselves, not meet their friends or talk to their friends, because at the moment we can't meet them anyway. But so you're
Yeah.
kind of finding a change in that normal teenage behavior. It all of a sudden gets more of it, and new stuff is coming in.
And that
You
friendship
kind of know.
thing, yeah,
How-
that friendship thing at the moment would
Yeah,
be huge for them. I mean, it's one thing,
yeah, yeah,
as adults, we know, okay, well, I can clean the house, or I can, do whatever work I'm doing. But teens, they like that. Their escapism really is when they meet with their pals, and that's gone. And online is, but it's not the same for them.
no, no. Yeah, it is true, Barbara, what you're saying is, because that's the main the contacts with their peers and hanging out with them is what kind of say that most teenagers would say that keeps them sane, from having to study and going to school and
Yeah,
dealing with
even to give
parents.
out about the parents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of an outlet. It's kind of where they can let off steam, and they feel understood, and so all of that is kind of taken away from them right now. Yeah, it's a difficult time for them.
Yeah, it is. And actually, and I'm just wondering, just on that, because you mentioned, they might cry more, or, get stroppy more. Is there a difference between boys and girls who will cry more, or like, will the lads cry as well, or is that just a girl thing?
Yeah, no, I think it depends on the household as well, Barbara, and again, some households you find, hopefully not too many anymore, boys don't cry type of thing, and hopefully that isn't happening too much. But I find, generally speaking, with men and boys, they show when they're depressed more in type of anger expression. So they might be more angry and flare up, whereas
Yeah.
girls are kind of more withdrawn and kind of cry more. So there is a little bit of a difference, but you can't generalize it, And another thing, what's really important is that there's a difference between adults and teenagers, how how to show depression. Like I find a lot of times, like when I work with teenagers, I have one session first with the parents and the teen to get a background history. And then I work with the teen by themselves for whatever sessions they need, and build that trust. And they know they can tell me things they may not necessarily be able to tell their parents.
Yeah.
And what often is the case that parents find it difficult to understand when a teen is depressed. They may appear completely normal today or this morning and be chatty and, have a bit of a laugh with you. And in the afternoon, they disappear and show untypical behavior. And it's this kind of up and down that's more of an up and down than your normal teenage behavior. And parents then question this, I don't actually know whether my child is depressed or not, because they seem fine one minute and the next minute they're not. And that fact that the child feels misunderstood by the parent, they would tell me that in a session, that the parents would say it to them, like, why are you saying you're depressed? You're fine now. And that makes them feel misunderstood, which then again makes them even feel lower, if you know what I mean. So as a parent, to really talk to your teen about how they're feeling and what is going on to them, and tell them you understand that it is difficult, is a huge step already in helping them to get better.
Yeah, no, I firmly believe it. And one thing I would say is, mine now go, as I've said before, from 18 to 26, or should I say 26 to 18. And each of them, like, it's different. It's no one way will suit them all. As you say, when they get that peak and trough kind of mood thing that's going on, you help in one way with one, and it's going to be a different way of communicating then with another. So it's never the same for each one, or at least it wasn't here. You're kind of thinking, well, hang on, that worked with that one, but it's not working with this one. Now where do I go? What am I going to do? How do I think? But at the moment now, the older teenagers, now, I have a Leaving Cert student here. And up to last week, we're kind of going, okay, is it happening? Is it not happening? So that was the main question in this house last week. So now we know it is happening, only it's happening much further down the road. And I'm here going, okay, well, how are we going to measure out, you know, the next few months to keep him sane so that I bite me lip and understand when he's feeling just agitated and frustrated? Because, you know, the first thing he said to me was, well, that's it. That's summer gone, you know, and that was it. So how do we help them now? Or what can we tell our teenagers now going through this time? Because that's you know, an extra, I think it works out about an extra 6 weeks or so onto their academic calendar. That's a long time when you're 17, 18.
Yeah. You know, Barbara, first of all, you know, the My World study I mentioned at the beginning that was done from the School of Psychology, they identified as the main stressors for young people is school, exams, and homework. And now what is happening, that's just magnified now, isn't it? The stress is already, and now this is just added to it. So, you know, it is really, really difficult. So what happens is, I think the first thing is what might help the parents as well as the teen is to kind of go and accept it. You cannot control your circumstances. You cannot control the situation you're in. And sometimes what happens is parents, adults, or children want to try and control the situation they're in.
Yes.
But the more you try and control something that you can't control, the more distressed you get. So I think the first step is for everyone to just accept it. And the date has been postponed for the end of July or August. We still don't really know if that is going to happen. So, you know, it's completely uncontrollable, but we need to be practical. So what can you do? What can you do to make yourself feel better? So the first thing is, what can you control? Think about, what can I control? The teen can think that, the parent can think that. What can I control? Well, I can only control what I do, right? Or what I'm thinking. I can't control anything else. So first of all, I would suggest, and everyone is different, but what will help is to actually sit down and say, right, for the next couple of weeks, I'm not going to look at my studying at all. I'm going to have a break, because the stress of it all, trying to, will it happen, will it not happen, and all of that is just wearing you down. It's wearing you out. You need to have a break now. So take a week, take 2 weeks, decide yourself what that break, how long it is and what it looks like. Write it all down, get yourself a plan, a kind of plan it all out and say, my break is going to be from 2, all right? Then go and start after you have had your break. Start studying sorting out your study notes. Take one subject at a time. And, you know, the study notes could be absolutely perfect for some, and some might find they have gaps in it. You know, I'd say some of the courses they haven't even finished yet in school. I'd say that
that's true. Some of them
haven't covered all the material. So sort out one subject at a time. Take your time with it. Go through it. Have I got everything I need? Have I got past papers? Have I got the notes? Have I got the books? Have I got my notes? If not, get in touch with your colleagues, your mates, and see if they can help you out. Share a few notes, and don't put pressure on yourself there either. Like, don't try and sort all the subject in one day. Take one at a time and take a day or two to sort each subject. Another one then is, you can control the environment. So get your study space cleared out. Get rid of all the junk that's been collecting. Get yourself a nice, comfortable space. Get your index cards, your markers, your colors, whatever you like. You know, set yourself up when you go back to studying, then you feel kind of a freshness.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to cut through all this clutter. You can just sit down now and look at what you need to do. Aim for so aim to the end of July that the exams will happen, and work yourself back, okay? Think, okay, what do I need to study? Make a study plan that you would have practiced in school anyway. What do I need to do? You know, how many hours do I need in, say, English, and what do I need in maths, and what do I need here? Make yourself a loose study plan so you know what you're heading into. Also, reassess your CAO application. You know, there's all this uncertainty. We don't know what the grades are going to be like. What is the university? What are they going to do? Are they going to make it easier for people to get in or not? We don't know any of that.
I know, and that's actually one of and it's not, it wasn't supposed to be really part of this, but funnily enough, it was that because of those unknowns, as you mentioned, of the points and the CAO and whatever, it's kind of just to put them out and just leave them out there. As you say, you've no control over them, and not to get too hung up on them, and come back to that space that you're in, that you can control, and relieve that pressure.
Fill out the CO form to the best of your ability. Fill out all the options, front and back, put it all in. And at least you know there are plans A, B, C, D, and E, and F in there. And then go and do and think, well, what if all else fails? What if I don't get into university? Then think about, well, what else can I do maybe for a year that will give me something to do? And maybe there's a course out there that's a level 5 or 6, or, you know, something else that might tickle your interest, you know. But it's not the end of the world. And I tell you, I speak from experience. Two of my children went to college, and one studied a year and a half and stopped and completely changed what she's doing. And one of the other ones also did a year and then changed. And a lot of the kids do that. And you know what? They're absolutely happy now where they are. They have great jobs. They're really enjoying their life. So, you know, as a mother, then I was looking at that going, oh my God, what is going to happen? And they were kind of confused and didn't know what am I going to do now? But it's not the end of the world. It's just a few months out of their life, a year out of their life. And sometimes it's not a bad thing, because they're maturing, and then maybe a year later they actually know what they want. So, you know, even I know parents don't like it when I say this, but sometimes I say, look, if your child doesn't know what they want, go and do an arts degree. Go and do it, because what you're learning is research, it's communications, it's putting projects together, you know, how to study for college. And after a year, you can still go and change into something else. But you're older and you can make a better decision. And you know, you kind of, it's totally different. A year is a long time in a young person's life, but in real life, it's not really, you know.
I tell you, I couldn't agree with you more, because I know when this whole thing now kicked off, that and like you, I had one, you know, did you know, a year and a half, thereabouts, 2 years, and kind of went, nah, not really for me, and went off on a tangent, did something else, loves what they're doing now. So, you know, it is hard. And I suppose because he was my first, I kind of went, oh, and it was a shock for me. But then I had to realize, actually, do you know what? This is his own future that he is actually mapping out. But with regards now, my youngest, there is definitely a plan B and C in place. And I would say before the end of this, there could be a D, E, and F in place as well. Yeah, exactly. Just to make sure that they keep their options open, because I kind of figured myself that this, you know, if we weren't where we were now, that there would be some going through saying, okay, I have it mapped, I'm doing it this way, and that's it. And, you know, for some, okay. But now that they have the space, some of them might actually be thinking, gosh, do you know what? Maybe I might actually change it this way. It might actually, you know, that they can make it kind of work for them as well, that it has opened their mind saying, well, if I don't get that, gosh, what can I do? So therefore, it is a learning process that they are learning. Do you know what? I have other skills in areas. Yes, I'm good at maths. It doesn't have to be a maths course that I go on to, or a maths-based course. I'm also good at, as you said, you know, go into the arts and do the creative and do the learning that way. So it might actually be, some students might come out of this going, actually, do you know what, that gap to think and realign and refocus on whatever, it might actually work for their benefit too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so great that you're saying that, Barbara, because at the end of the day, like I said, we can only control what we do and what we think. And we can think about, oh, this is so terrible. And, you know, what if this happens? I'm never going to get into college. And we can catastrophize, and we could think of the worst possible outcome. But we can also go and choose to think, well, maybe this is an opportunity for me now to reevaluate what I really want. I've got the space, I've got the time. I'm going to clear, like I said, take 2 weeks out, take a break, go and, I know there's not much you can do, but maybe, just take a rest and do music or do whatever you enjoy. Play the PlayStation, whatever it is, and then come back and be refreshed and start again and have this positive mindset.
Or
and
do mommy's favorite and clean your room.
Oh, God, no. Hold on, Barbara. Oh, yeah, it depends what the reward is. Maybe a little reward afterwards. Yeah. But it is a great time now as well for families to connect, and I mean, I'm doing jigsaw puzzles with my 24-year-old, and we're playing card games and all of that. I don't think he would have done that if we hadn't been in the situation we're in now. I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
It's great to connect, use the time to connect. But Barbara, sorry, I just want to say, I forgot to mention one thing when I said, for the leaving cert and all of that, to make a plan and sort of have a schedule and a study plan and, taking the 2 weeks out and clearing the desk and getting your notes in order and that. If you're writing it all down, go then afterwards and make a tick it off a list. It's like your goal that you've set yourself. So tick it off as a teen, because that gives you a sense of achievement. And it's so important now to find some ways of, a sense of achievement rather than just aimlessly going through the day with no goals and, with no ambition and hopelessness. It's kind of set a plan up and give yourself little goals and then tick them off your list, and you feel, and it also will build the young person's resilience, because they kind of have to plan. They have to now plan and come up with solutions themselves. No one else is going to do it for them. And that builds resilience for the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are coming to the end of what I mean. You're an education in yourself when I'm chatting to you. I learn so much from you. I'm in the position that I could replay this and write down all the tips. So I hope plenty of parents took notes out there, and teenagers as well. But before we wrap up, what tips for parents would you have on how they can manage, not just leaving certs, but their teens in general, on how they can manage their teenagers' mental health, say, going through all this, particularly that we are at the moment, or in general?
Okay, well, look, like I said, we can't control our circumstances. That's the first thing for everyone to accept that, all right? So what can you control? If you're able to provide healthy, nutritional meals, keep everyone in the family healthy, try and cut out the sugary and alcohol and all of that, and go get out there and get some fresh air, get the vitamin D up. So these are basic things that everyone can do to help with their mental health. And we know there's a food-mood connection. So, the blood sugar spikes and all of that. So eating healthy is a simple step that you can take. Another one is, as a parent, talk to your teen about how you feel. Be an example. Say, look, I'm kind of not sure what's going to happen either. With these circumstances we haven't been in before, and I'm feeling a little bit, out of control myself. But sure, that's okay. We're all in the same boat. So open up about your own feelings and talk to your teen, because then the teen will feel encouraged to also talk about their own feelings and acknowledge them, be empathic, and try not to fob it off and say, I'm sure you'll be grand, it'll be all gone. Tell me more about it. How do you feel? And when is it worse? When is it better? Have these questions rather than fobbing it off and say, I'm sure you'll be grand. Have some fun times. Like I said, play cards, have something to look forward to. Do a Friday night takeaway with fun time. And I know I said healthy eating, but every now and again, have a takeaway and have maybe a card game or some kind of game that you play together as a family, something to look forward to. So these are little things that you can do. And also help your teen to build their self-esteem by always pointing out the strength that they have. They might feel overwhelmed right now.
Even if I'm biting my lip.
What's that, Barbara?
Even if I'm biting my lip.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's okay to have the odd argument. We all have to do that. It's okay to have a difference of opinion, but what I mean is, you know, when you're feeling low is look, point out all the good things they have done, you know, like I think, you know, you've done really well when you did, you know, this exam, or you really, you know, I really appreciated you helping me with working in the garden and helping me with, you know, carrying all these heavy bags, and, you know, always kind of pointing out the things that they're doing well. And, you know, that encourages more behavior that is in the same kind of line, positive behavior, when they feel that they're getting a pat on the back, it's been acknowledged what they're doing.
Yeah, and you know, funny, you just mentioned there a couple of minutes ago about acknowledging your own feelings, and I was thinking yesterday, you know, ahead of today, I was thinking, gosh, you know, when they're little, you know, mommy and daddy just have all the answers. Like, we know everything when they're small, and then all of a sudden when they get to teenagers, they kind of realize that, well, actually, mommy and daddy don't really have all the answers, so we're going to have to kind of discover stuff for ourselves. And then, like that, as you say, we have to be able to admit, you know, I mean, I said it to my guys, they come in and said, gosh, what's wrong, you know, and I was just on the verge of crying, and I said, I'm sorry, but this whole thing is just swept over me like a wave. You're just going to have to let me cry.
Yeah.
And I went, all right, that's grand.
Yeah.
And like that, they just, you know, but to connect. So, gosh, Susie, I tell you, I could chat all day with you. I really, really could. Is, you know,
such a broad topic.
Fascinating to
So
talk
much,
to you.
yeah.
It really is fascinating, but we are going to have to wrap it up there now. Your information, again, it will be on the Facebook page. I know the email, this will be, it's live at the moment, obviously, but then it will be uploaded over the coming weeks on our YouTube channel, and people can access it there. And your information, so your email, even if you just want to call it out, or your website name, we will be putting it up there.
Well, my website is susilodolacounselling.com, and my email is info@susilodolacounselling.com.
Perfect, not a bother. Susie, thank you so much for this morning.
Yeah.
It was an absolute pleasure, and
lovely chatting to you too, and enjoy the lovely weather. I'm sure it's fabulous up in Donegal now.
Oh, do you know what? It is glorious, absolutely glorious now. And yeah, it'll be a few laps of the house and play with the dog, and that'll be my downtime.
Exactly. Yeah. Enjoy.
Thanks, Susie.
Yeah,
and
thanks
everybody.
Yeah, take care now. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.